Hi there, I'm Joseph with Premier Security. Today we're going to answer the question of what is the hardest part of being a security officer. When we think of what can make the job of a security officer difficult, we usually conjure up scenarios of having to trespass a loud and angry person, or maybe having somebody threaten to physically harm us. And while those scenarios are certainly difficult, they really don't happen all that often. And we find that most officers rise to the occasion in dealing with these kinds of things. So, what is the hardest part of the job? Though maybe not true for every single position out there, what most new officers don't know is that the hardest part of the job is actually being bored and avoiding the complacency that comes with that boredom. So this complacency usually stems from the job being very quiet, maybe it's really repetitive, and so the officer loses focus. Worse yet, some officers stop doing the basic functions of the job because they feel like nothing is being accomplished with their presence and their activity out there on site. Again, this level of boredom isn't true of every position. Some officers are in positions that require constant interaction, response, movement, and their shifts fly by. Lucky them. If anything, these officers look for the few moments they can find each day to slow down and get a breather. However, much of security work is done after hours, during the evenings, the nights, weekends. We're basically out there when everyone else has gone home. And it's during these hours we are often the only people that we can even see moving around on these particular locations. For some of these posts, having anything happen, running into someone on the property, responding to an issue, these are all signs that something's wrong. If anything, we want nothing to happen on these shifts. So, how do we fight this boredom that comes with a quiet post? Well, the first thing to know is that security was hired for a reason. Something bad at some point has occurred, or there's a concern that something will occur. There's something valuable enough on that property that the owner is willing to pay a security officer's wage just to make sure it stays secure. So now security officers are not cheap, especially compared to, say, an alarm system or cameras, which can sometimes also still be used in conjunction with your activity. Yet the ongoing cost of having a security officer on site is an acceptable price to pay to secure that thing. So even with this knowledge, the quietest, most boring post can make even the best security officer question the value of being on site. And perhaps it's even true that 99% of the time, nothing would happen if you didn't do your job. The problem is, that still leaves 1% of the time when something does go wrong, and we can't predict when that's going to be. For some sites, that 1% risk would be absolutely devastating if it were to occur. Which means we have to stay on our toes during that 99% of the time when nothing's happening if we want to stop the devastating thing from happening in that last 1%. So, second on our list of things to know is that you are having a much larger impact than you can actually perceive. It might feel, when you're out there, that you're accomplishing nothing, but I can guarantee that you are making a difference. Time and time again, we have seen sites without security that were consistently hit with crime. Once security was added, the crime disappeared. Now, did this happen because security officers were apprehending people in the act of committing crimes? No. In fact, most officers never saw anyone. But that doesn't mean that they don't see you. So think about it. If a would-be criminal spots you patrolling a site, is he or she going to walk up, introduce themselves, and let you know that you thwarted their plans? No. He's going to skulk off and find some other place to break into. So put yourself in that criminal's shoes. If you had a choice of breaking into 2 locations, and only one location had a security officer walking around, which would you choose to break into? Now, we all know that criminals are notoriously dumb, but most of them still figure out the answer to that question pretty easily. They're going to go somewhere less risky, somewhere where there's not a security officer walking around and potentially identifying them, apprehending them, or notifying the police about their presence. So on that note, we've had clients suspend security service only to have crime come roaring back as soon as the officer left, at which point they put the security officer back. Obviously, this isn't a coincidence. Criminals are looking for those lapses in security, which is again why you need to stay on your toes, even when you see and you hear nothing. In the heaviest crime areas, officers have to be extra vigilant because crooks will study their patrols and their breaks and they'll find openings even if you are out there. So remember, crime is always occurring. Only by being a vigilant officer, making your presence known, and doing consistent patrols can you be 100% effective. And we can only be that effective by mastering the very hardest part of the job, which is accepting that job can be boring, and overcoming the complacency that comes with that boredom. So let's do a quick recap. Boredom is usually the hardest part of the job of working as a security officer. In order to stay focused, remember that number one, security was hired for a reason. Something bad happened or could possibly happen, and whatever or whoever you're protecting can't afford to have that occur. Number two, just because you don't see or hear anything doesn't mean criminals aren't watching you. By simply being present, you're stopping crime. I want to thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. If any of you have any suggestions for future topics, feel free to drop a message. I'll see you guys later.